Next up, we're going to remove the coil packs. It's a T30. We're now going to undo the 3 10mm bolts holding the driver's side fuel rail on. Whoa. I think this one's going to snap. Yep. Look at this. And to remove the fuel rail, you should just be able to pry it right off. There it goes. And now we've come to the injectors. Before getting the tool out, you're going to remove these, what I would say, spring clips. I assume they just hold tension. This is the tool to remove the injectors. It's pretty much a slide hammer. This end of it clips onto the end where the rubber seal is for the injector. Right after the rubber seal, it grabs the metal portion. He locks it in like that, and then you just hammer. This tool does have an interesting name. It's the DP tool. Brought to you by Amazon. There's one injector. Not broken. That injector does not want to come out. And of course it's the injector where the fuel rail bolt snapped as well. So I tried everything possible to take out these two injectors, but they are stuck in there. I mean, I've gone until my hands start to bleed, and all I did was I turned the connector, and I'll probably have to wiggle the valve cover around them. I don't know what else to do. Since the heads are coming off anyways, we'll just hammer them out from the side, the combustion chamber side. But time to take off this valve cover. Okay, let's take this valve cover off. Come on, yes, very good. Exhaust manifolds are cast iron and they're really heavy. So if somebody's trying to save some weight, get stainless steel exhaust manifold. And now the passenger side. You're gonna grab a 17 to undo this 17 nut for the fuel and this 17mm as well. This stud right here is an 8mm and it does hold part of the fuel rail. On the side of the head, we have a T40 bolt, which does hold the hard lines coming from the fuel pump. For the exhaust heat shield, we have 4 8mm bolts, one here, one here, one under here, and one under here. To continue undoing the fuel rail, there is a T30 bolt up against the block holding the hard line for the fuel rail going to the head. Continuing with the mayhem, there's a 13mm bolt right behind the alternator and an 8mm right underneath the alternator, which holds a metal heat shield right off the fuel pump. If you're going to remove the hard lines, I recommend you remove the alternator, as it'll make things a lot easier. The battery cable from the alternator is a 13mm nut. You have a connector on the back. And then you have a 13mm bolt on the front and 2 on the bottom. The reason I ended up taking off the alternator was because I got my 8mm ratcheting wrench stuck under the alternator. The nut on the fuel pump is also a 17mm. There's also a hard fuel line going underneath the engine mount and to another 17mm fitting. To undo the engine mount, there are 4 13mm bolts. There goes the fuel line. As before, we're going to undo the 3 10mm bolts holding the fuel rail on. Lucky for us, there are no snapped bolts on this side. Next, we're going to remove the exhaust manifold. And these bolts do look like Torx, but they're not. They are, what do you call? This is an R10, so a ribbed 10. I've never seen these before, but Jag uses them, and then because Jag uses them, I assume Ford is the one that used them initially. I'm gonna try to turn these bolts, but I don't think we're gonna have much luck here. We'll probably have to Dremel it out somehow. Today we're gonna try to figure out what to do with these valve cover bolts. We got 2 of them that have just corroded. And the reason for the corrosion is that Jaguar places a pad between the supercharger and the valve cover, and it just looks like that's where all the moisture is retained, and it just corrodes the 2 bolts. In this case, there are no more bolt heads, and what we're going to try to do is Dremel a slot into them, see if we can undo them that way. If not, then we're just going to cut the heads off and use vice grips to get out the rest of it. Whenever cutting, always have some safety goggles on. You never know what's gonna come back at you. Alright, we got our Dremel. We'll see what we can do. Let's see if the slots I cut are good enough. Okay, round 2. Oh, it's turning. Let's just see how much I can turn it. Oh, yes. Yes. Join the others. Cool. We got one. Let's see if we can get the other. Oh no. Ah. It broke my screwdriver. Look at this. Man, these discs are not lasting me. We swapped discs to a more strong type of disc that Dremel does sell. The reason I was avoiding this was it's really big diameter wise, and I was trying to avoid hitting the ridges, but this bolt is super tough, so I need to do something else. There it goes. Looking at the lobes, it looks like, they're okay. This one's got a little bit of damage, and I don't even know what it would be from. I'm wondering if this is from some sort of oil starvation to the cam, but we'll see how the other head looks. These front intake lobes, they also have similar wear, just like the passenger side head. Chain on both sides is tight, so at least the tensioner's working, but that doesn't mean it didn't jump timing. Okay. This guy's off. There it is. One thing I'm taking note of is the exhaust side and the intake side. The links are not lining up, and especially on this side, like look at that. That is significantly different. So the two exhaust cams are, I think, at a different phase. Yeah. So the exhaust cam here is going straight up. This one's going kind of parallel to the ground here. The intake cam is going vertically up, and this intake cam is off by, I think, a tooth. I think we jumped timing. It's just what side jump timing. I'm gonna mess around and see if I can take off the crank pulley without the actual special tool. We're going to try to undo the crank bolt here. It is a left-hand thread, so it tightens going leftwards, loosens going clockwise. There she goes. So again, to loosen, you want to go clockwise. Went to AutoZone and rented a 3-ton puller. I'm able to actually pull the crank hub off. I do not recommend this tool, but because we are going to replace the crank bolt, yeah, I'm using it. If you have time and you're not in a pinch, get the OEM style crank puller. There it is. Now we're going to remove the timing cover by unbolting all the 8mm around. When you undo all the 8mm bolts, just pry off the timing cover. So everything in here looks okay. I don't see any broken chain guides. No cracks in them. They're the updated style. When I do press it in though, we do get oil that squeezes past the seal for the piston. So I'm wondering if that's a failure point. Could be. Let's see if this one does it. Yeah, look at this one. This one's rock solid. Ugh, I can't press that one in. So maybe this one has had a seal failure. That's pretty loose. Anyways, since we're gonna be pretty much rebuilding this whole thing at this point, I'm gonna undo the chain tensioners. I'm gonna undo the chain guides, and we're gonna try to pull the chain off. To undo the chain tensioners, you're gonna use a T30, and it just has those two bolts holding it in place. There it goes. Throw it in the pan over there. Let's do this one. This one's under tension. This one I think is good, so might be a bit harder to get out. Opa. Look at that one. That one just sprung right out. So that one's good. To undo the chain guides, we have a T50, 10mm, 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 and the same repeats on the other side as well. I'm going to leave the chain in and just move on to removing the camshafts. Once the camshafts are removed, the chain will be loose, and then it will probably enable me to move these guides a little bit more. After undoing the chain tensioner, we're going to remove the camshafts. It is a T30, and since the torquing sequence goes 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to go 4, 3, 2, 1 for loosening. One cam off. Exhaust cam is out. We're going to leave all the buckets in. Once we have the head off, then I'll mark them all and then prepare everything for the machine shop. But to undo the head bolts, you'll need the R12 socket. And for me, it's a 3/8 drive. Shouldn't be wearing a sweater for this. Whew. Those are no joke. Before you begin pulling the head, make sure to undo the 10mm that's underneath the oil filter housing. And there's two more T30s sitting in front of the cam covers. Look at that. Undo those and it just pops right off. There it is. Lovely. Overall, everything looks pretty good. The cylinder walls all look pretty fresh, minty, good. The interesting thing right there, looks like an intake valve. Decided to go for a little bit of a kissy poo with the piston. I'm sure it's reusable, but the piston's reusable, but we probably have a bent valve. That's interesting. Okay. And now to do the driver's side camshafts. One unique thing about the driver's side head is you have this metal tube going down to the oil pan. I believe this is to actually suck out the oil from where the oil fill cap is, but I'm not 100% sure. But it only is held in place with one T30 bolt, and it sits right between the two cams here. And you can get to it from the front. Okay, let's take out the intake cam. Okay, now the exhaust cam. Here we go, round 2. As before, we have the two T30 bolts that sit under the cam sprockets. And then we have two 10mm bolts that sit at the back of the head. And that's only for the driver's side. There is one more 10mm and it sits at the top of the head here. Oh yeah, there it goes. Forgot about the pipe. Head gasket looks okay. On the driver's side, all the pistons look pretty decent. No impact with any valves, at least from what I can see. So, I know you can only see a little bit here, but we have the valve covers at the top and the cam covers on the front. The wiring harness is still over there. Next steps will probably be to take off the clutch and the cooler that sits in the V, but I just wanted to stop here. I got all the buckets out. I got all the head bolts baggied up. So I just want to kind of look underneath and see. This is the head that had the two injectors that are just completely stuck in there. So I just left them in there. I assume the machine shop can handle that, but hopefully this doesn't get too oily. Just wanted to see underneath how it looks. I don't think they're going to have to resurface the heads. It's not like we blew a head gasket. The car didn't overheat when the failure happened. So the only thing they'll probably do is run a level over it, make sure it's flat, clean up any of this head gasket material, and then move on. Which I'm okay with that. After this, I'll probably just bag these up, put them in a container, and get them ready to go. I do have some questions. You can see the buckets here. Some have contact marks on the top, some don't. And these are all sized. So for example, this is a 3.295. The one right next to it's a 3.28. Oh, this one's really hard to read. 3.22. So I'm not sure if these wear marks are normal and that's what you want, or if you want no wear marks, which means I'm assuming that you have a good oil film and that the cam is not wearing away at the bucket. Let's take a look at this head. This is the head that I think one of the valves made contact with the piston. It's gonna be for cylinder 2. I think this is 2. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Don't quote me on that. I just think that's what it is. I've been looking through the documentation and they say it somewhere. I haven't really paid attention, to be honest. Head gasket looks good. No signs that the actual combustion chambers were mixing. So, AKA, the head gasket was not blown. All right. We got oil. This sucker's gonna be heavy, I know it. Oh! Glimmer.
Just makes no sense.
Not good things.